The darkness of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the distant pinpricks of stars and the smooth silver hull of the patrol vessel. Vigilant inside the ship's bridge, Commander Reed stared at the main view screen, his face bathed in the soft blue glow of the control panels. "Status report, Officer Teller," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Teller, a tall figure with four-fingered hands and skin the color of pale granite, looked up from her. "Station, all systems normal, Commander. We're approaching the outer boundary of Prohibited Zone X7. Reed nodded. This was his 5th patrol of the abandoned human territories this year, a duty most Union officers tried to avoid. The empty planets and drifting ruins made for a boring assignment, but Reed found comfort in the predictability. 20,000 years had passed since any human voice had been heard in these systems. There was something peaceful about that silence. "Prepare the standard sensor sweep," Reed ordered. Union Science Division wants updated readings on radiation levels near the old terraform stations. The Vigilant was small as patrol ships went. Just 40 crew members and barely a 100 meters long, but it was perfect for these monitoring missions. Able to slip between the debris fields that marked the edges of what had once been humanity's empire. "Commander, I'm picking up an unusual energy reading," Teller said suddenly, her fingers moving rapidly across her console. "It's coming from the relay station at the edge of this system." Reed frowned. The ancient human relay stations had been dead for thousands of years, studied and cataloged by generations of Union scientists. Could be a sensor glitch. "Run a diagnostic." "Already did, sir." "The reading is real." Teller looked up, her large eyes showing concern, and it's growing stronger. Reed moved to her station, looking at the readings himself. The energy signature was unlike anything in the Union database. A pulsing pattern that seemed to shift every few seconds. "Change course," Reed decided. "Let's take a closer look." The Vigilant altered its path, engines humming as it turned toward the distant relay station. A massive ring-shaped structure that had once been part of humanity's faster-than-light communication network. As they approached, the energy readings grew stronger. "Maintain distance," Reed cautioned. "Send a probe first." The small probe launched from the Vigilance bay, streaking toward the relay station. On the view screen, they watched as it approached the ancient structure, getting visual feed. Now, Teller announced the image that appeared on the screen made Reed's breath catch. The relay station, dead and dark for 20 millennia, was lighting up section by section like a massive machine waking from sleep. Blue-white energy coursed through its circular frame. "That's impossible," whispered Officer Kai from the science station. "The power sources should have degraded thousands of years ago." Before Reed could respond, the relay station pulsed with blinding light. The probe's transmission cut out instantly. "Probe lost," Teller reported. Alarm evident in her voice. "Back us off," Reed ordered. "Send an emergency message to Union Command. Tell them." A deep vibration cut through the ship, so powerful that Reed felt it in his bones. The view screen flickered, then stabilized to show the relay station now fully activated at center, filled with swirling energy. "Some kind of slip-space portal is forming," Kai said, voice shaking. "The readings match old records of human jump technology, but 100 times more powerful." Reed had never seen a human slip-space portal. No living being had. The technology had been banned throughout the Union for 15,000 years, deemed too dangerous and unstable. "Send that message now," Reed ordered Teller. "Priority Alpha communications are being jammed." Teller replied, panic edging into her voice. "Something's interfering with." She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the view screen. Reed turned to look and felt his heart skip a beat. Something was emerging from the portal. First came the nose, sharp and angular, made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Then came the main body of the vessel, stretching on until it dwarfed the relay station itself. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Vigilant, with strange markings along its hull. "Those are human script symbols," Kai whispered, checking the database. "That's a human warship." Reed had studied the old records. He knew the stories of human warships that could destroy entire fleets of weapons that could crack planets. But those were just stories, legends from 20,000 years ago. "Scan it," he ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. The scans can't penetrate the hull, Kai reported, but I'm detecting life signs inside. Thousands of them. The implications hit Reed like a physical blow. Humans alive after 20,000 years of silence. Send a hail on all frequencies, Reed said. Include the first contact protocols. Teller worked her console. Message sent. No response. The human vessel hung in space, motionless, except for faint lights flickering across its surface. Then, without warning, every communication channel on the Vigilant activated at once. A voice filled the bridge, deep, resonant, and speaking in a language none of them recognized. "Computer translate," Reed commanded. After a moment, the computer responded. Translation approximately 76% accurate. Language identified as Ancient Human Standard. The message repeated. This time, with the computer translating, "The Nomad returns. Humanity awakens." A chill ran down Reed's spine. In all the Union's history, and all the scenarios they had prepared for, no one had ever truly believed that humanity would return. Commander Kai called out, voice trembling. "I'm detecting energy buildup in the human vessel. They're powering weapon systems." Reed stared at the massive ship. The Vigilant was a patrol vessel, lightly armed and never meant for combat against anything larger than smuggler ships. Against this human warship, they stood no chance. Evasive maneuvers, Reed ordered. "Get us out of here. Maximum speed." The Vigilant turned, engines straining as it accelerated away from the human vessel. On the rear view screen, Reed watched as the massive ship moved with surprising grace, adjusting its position. "They're not pursuing," Teller reported, sounding surprised. "They don't need to," Kai said quietly. "Look." Reed looked at the sensor displays and felt his blood run cold. All across the system, ancient human facilities were powering up. Defense platforms, relay stations, orbital structures that had been studied and cataloged as harmless ruins for thousands of years. "It's like they're waking up," Teller whispered. As they watched, the massive human ship, the Nomad, seemed to shudder before suddenly elongating and vanishing into another slipspace portal, leaving only the activated human structures behind. "Where did they go?" Reed demanded. Kai worked frantically at her station. Based on the portal trajectory, they're headed toward the Arcturus system. Reed felt a weight settle in his stomach. Arcturus had once been a major human colony world, now home to one of the Union's largest research stations dedicated to studying human artifacts. "As soon as we're clear of the jamming field, send word to Union Command," Reed said. Tell them humanity has returned." As the Vigilant raced away from the scene, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. For 20,000 years, the galaxy had developed in the absence of humanity. Species had evolved, civilizations had risen, and the Union had formed. All while humans had become nothing more than a historical footnote. Now that footnote had returned, bringing with it all the dangerous power that had made humans the most feared species in the galaxy's history, and they had only just announced their arrival. Panic swept through the halls of the Galactic Union Council chamber. Representatives from over 30 species gathered in the massive circular room, their voices rising in alarm as the reports from the Vigilant were displayed on the main screen. "Order. I will have order." The council leader, a tall being named Voss, with skin like polished bronze, pounded his ceremonial staff against the floor. Gradually, the noise died down. "We must approach this situation with calm and reason." The images from the Vigilant's encounter with the human ship Nomad played on a loop behind him. Many representatives watched with undisguised fear. "What do we know so far?" Voss asked, turning to the military liaison. Admiral Kane stepped forward. "The human vessel appeared 3 days ago at the edge of prohibited Zone X7. Since then, it has made brief appearances at 7 different locations, all former human colony worlds." Kane touched a control and a star map appeared, showing the Nomad's path. It seems to be activating dormant human technology across these systems. Long-range scans show structures that have been silent for 20 millennia, suddenly powering up. A representative from the forest world of Taurus stood. "We should mobilize the fleet immediately. If humans have truly returned, we must show strength." Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber, but Voss raised his hand. Before we commit to any military action, we need to understand what we're facing. I've summoned our leading expert on human history. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and a small, hunched figure entered. Dr. Morgan walked slowly, leaning on a cane, his age evident in every careful step. Despite being well over 100 years old, his eyes were sharp and clear. Dr. Morgan Voss said, with a respectful nod, "Please share your insights on this situation." Morgan approached the central platform, looking up at the images of the Nomad. "What you're seeing," he said, his voice surprisingly strong, "is something many of us believed would never happen. The return of humanity." He tapped his cane against the floor. For those unfamiliar with ancient history, humans dominated this sector of the galaxy 20,000 years ago. They were not the most numerous species, but they were undoubtedly the most aggressive in their expansion and technological development. Morgan gestured toward the image of the Nomad. "This vessel appears to match descriptions in our oldest archives of what humans called generation ships. Vessels designed to travel vast distances over thousands of years. Are you suggesting?" Kane interrupted that this ship has been traveling for 20 millennia. "It's possible," Morgan nodded. "Historical records indicate that before humanity's disappearance, they were working on technology for intergalactic travel. If this is truly a returning generation ship, then these humans have been isolated from our galaxy's history. They don't know about the peace accords, the Union's formation, or that their home worlds have been quarantined." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. "What do they want?" Voss finally asked. Morgan shook his head. "That council leader is the question that should worry us all." On the remote mining colony of Helios 9, Administrator Wilson sat at his desk reviewing production reports. The small colony, with just under 5,000 inhabitants, supplied rare minerals to 3 different Union worlds. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Wilson called, not looking up from his reports. The door slid open and footsteps approached his desk. "You have very lax security for a Union outpost," said an unfamiliar voice. Wilson looked up sharply. Standing before him was a figure unlike any he had seen before. Bipedal with skin, a shade of pink-brown, 2 arms, and a head covered with short dark hair. The stranger wore a dark uniform with unfamiliar insignia on the shoulders. Wilson's hand moved slowly toward the alarm button under his desk. "I wouldn't do that," the stranger said calmly. "Your security forces couldn't reach us in time, and it would only complicate our conversation." Wilson froze. "Who are you?" "Captain Thomas," the stranger replied, "of the starship Nomad." He smiled, showing flat white teeth. "I'm human." Wilson felt his heart skip a beat. He had seen the emergency broadcasts, the warnings about the possible return of humanity, but to have one standing in his office, "How did you get past our orbital defenses?" Wilson managed to ask. Thomas laughed. "Your defenses are based on simplified versions of our technology. It's like trying to keep the inventor out with his own lock." He sat down uninvited across from Wilson. "We've been watching your Union for months. Your species have built civilizations from the ashes of our empire using technologies you barely understand." Wilson swallowed hard. "What do you want right now?" "Just a conversation." Thomas leaned back in the chair. "My ancestors left this galaxy 20,000 years ago to escape a catastrophic war. Now their descendants have returned to reclaim their heritage." "Your people disappeared," Wilson said carefully. "The records say your records are incomplete," Thomas interrupted. "We didn't disappear. We retreated. What remained of humanity entered suspended animation, hidden in bunkers beneath our worlds, waiting for the Nomad to return with the cure." Wilson's eyes widened. "Cure for what?" Thomas's expression darkened. "A neurological plague engineered during the last war. It targeted human brain patterns. Specifically a weapon designed to wipe us out completely." He leaned forward. "The Nomad was our last hope. A ship sent beyond the reach of our enemies to find a solution, while the rest of our people slept, hidden from those who sought our extinction. But that was 20,000 years ago." Wilson said, "Whatever species created this weapon must be long gone." Perhaps Thomas agreed. "But their legacy remains. Your Union quarantined our worlds, declared our technology dangerous, and built your civilization on the ruins of ours. He stood up. We've come to wake our people and reclaim what's ours. The Union won't allow that, Wilson warned. They'll see it as an invasion. Thomas smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. The Union exists because we weren't here. That's about to change. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. A courtesy, Administrator. In 3 days, the Nomad will retrieve something from the 4th planet in the system, a hidden facility. I suggest you evacuate any mining operations there. Why tell me this? Wilson asked. Because not all humans want war, Thomas replied. But make no mistake, we will protect our own. He touched a device on his wrist and his body seemed to shimmer. Consider this your only warning. Thomas vanished, leaving Wilson alone in the office. With shaking hands, he activated the emergency communication channel to Union Command. Admiral Kane stood in the observation room, watching as Union scientists examined the strange device found in Administrator Wilson's office. The human Thomas had left it behind, apparently by accident. Anything? Kane asked the lead scientist. It's unlike anything we've seen, she replied. The technology is clearly human in origin, but far more advanced than any artifacts we've studied. Kane turned as Dr. Morgan entered the room. Doctor, what do you make of this report from Helios 9? Morgan read through the transcript of Wilson's encounter with the human captain. If what this Thomas says is true, then we have a far greater problem than one human ship. Explain? Kane demanded. He claims there are humans in suspended animation hidden beneath the surface of their former worlds. Morgan said, worlds that have been inhabited, studied, and developed by Union species for thousands of years. Kane's expression grew grim. How many based on historical population estimates before their disappearance? Morgan looked up, his eyes troubled. Potentially billions. The room fell silent. And now they believe they found a cure for whatever drove them into hiding, Kane said softly. They're coming back to wake their people. Morgan nodded. The galaxy as we know it is about to change, Admiral. The question is, are we ready? Outside the window, Union warships gathered in formation, preparing for a conflict with an enemy that had been sleeping for 20,000 years. An enemy that had once ruled the stars and now had returned, bringing with them technologies and weapons that existed only as warnings in the oldest Union records. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The observation deck of the Nomad offered a spectacular view of the stars. Captain Thomas stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the massive ship approached the red planet that his ancestors had once called Mars. After 20,000 years, the 4th planet of humanity's home system looked different. Strange structures dotted its surface, evidence of the alien civilizations that had studied and built upon the ruins of human settlements. Captain, a voice called from behind him. Thomas turned to see Science Director Allen entering the observation deck. Allen was older than Thomas by nearly 20 years. His hair gray at the temples, his face lined with the wisdom that came from decades of leading the Nomad's scientific mission. The scans are complete, Allen said, joining Thomas at the viewport. Our instruments detect active cryogenic signatures beneath the surface, just as our records indicated. Thomas nodded. How many? At least 10,000 functioning pods in this facility alone. Allen's voice held a note of wonder. After all this time, they're still alive. Thomas still waiting for us. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The Nomad carried 50,000 humans, the descendants of the 5,000 who had left on the original mission. For generations, they had been raised with a single purpose: find a cure for the plague and return to awaken their sleeping kin. Now they had returned, but to a galaxy utterly transformed. The Union vessels are maintaining their distance, reported Military Commander Pierce as he strode onto the deck. Unlike the thoughtful Allen, Pierce was all sharp edges and hard angles. His body built for combat, his mind focused on threats. But they've established a blockade around the planet. 17 warships in total. Can we break through? Thomas asked. Pi smiled thinly. Easily. Their weapons are primitive compared to ours. But he hesitated. It would mean casualties. On their side, Thomas turned back to the viewport. That's not how I want to announce our return. With respect, Captain, Pice said, his voice hardening. These aliens have taken our worlds, stripped our resources, and treat our history like a cautionary tale. The bunker on Mars contains 10,000 of our people. We should reclaim what's ours by any means necessary. Alan shook his head. We were sent to find a cure, not start a new war. These species haven't harmed our sleeping kin. By all evidence, they didn't even know they existed. Not until now, Pice countered. And their first response was to surround Mars with warships. What does that tell you about their intentions? Thomas remained silent, weighing his options. The Nomad possessed technology 20,000 years, more advanced than anything they had encountered since their return. They could easily force their way through the Union blockade. But at what cost? We came back to save humanity, Thomas said finally. Not to make the same mistakes that nearly destroyed us before. He turned to Alan. Prepare a communication to the Union fleet. I want to talk. Dr. Morgan stood on the bridge of the Union flagship Concord, feeling very small next to Admiral Walker. The Admiral was a giant of a being, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin like polished obsidian. Despite his fearsome appearance, Walker was known throughout the Union as a thoughtful and measured commander. The human vessel is hailing us, reported the communications officer. Walker looked at Morgan. You're our expert on humanity, Doctor. Any advice before I speak with them? Morgan considered carefully. Humans respond to strength, but also to respect. Show neither fear nor aggression. Treat them as equals, regardless of how you actually feel. Walker nodded and straightened to his full height. Open the channel. The view screen flickered, and the image of Captain Thomas appeared. The human looked calm, his eyes moving between Walker and Morgan. This is Admiral Walker of the Galactic Union. Walker began. You have entered a restricted system without authorization. Thomas smiled slightly. Restricted by whom? Admiral. This system was the heart of human space 20,000 years before your Union existed. The galaxy has changed, Walker replied. The Union now maintains peace across 200 worlds. Peace built on the graves of my species, Thomas said, his smile fading. We've detected a human cryogenic facility beneath the surface of Mars. 10,000 of our people sleep there, Admiral. We've come to wake them. Walker's expression didn't change. Your ship represents an unknown threat to the Union. Your technology is beyond anything our scientists have encountered. Until we can be certain of your intentions, we cannot allow you access to Mars. Thomas leaned forward. You mistake my communication for a request, Admiral? It was merely a courtesy. We will retrieve our people with or without your permission. Morgan stepped forward. Captain Thomas. I am Dr. Morgan, a historian specializing in human studies. Perhaps we could meet face to face. There is much we could learn from each other. Thomas studied Morgan with interest. A historian? Then you know what happened to my species? We know that humanity seemed to vanish approximately 20,000 years ago, Morgan replied. The records are fragmentary at best. Thomas exchanged glances with someone off-screen, then nodded. Very well. A meeting, but not on your ship or mine. The surface of Mars, neutral ground. After the communication ended, Walker turned to Morgan. Is this wise, Doctor? Morgan sighed heavily. No, Admiral, but neither is starting a war with an enemy we don't understand. The Martian landscape stretched out in all directions, red dust swirling in the thin atmosphere. Despite 20 millennia of minimal terraforming, humans still required breathing apparatus on the surface. Thomas stood with Alan and Pierce, watching as the Union shuttle landed 100 meters away. This is a mistake, Pice muttered, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. We should be breaking through their blockade, not talking. We've spent 20,000 years seeking a cure. Alan reminded him. We can spare a few hours for diplomacy. Thomas said nothing. Watching as 3 figures descended from the shuttle, He recognized Admiral Walker and Dr. Morgan from the communication. The third was unknown to him, a being with translucent skin through which complex organs could be seen pulsing gently. As the Union representatives approached, Thomas stepped forward to meet them halfway. For the first time in 20 millennia, humans and the species that had replaced them stood face to face on the red soil of Mars. Captain Thomas Walker said with a formal nod. Admiral Thomas replied. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Dr. Morgan stepped forward eagerly. Captain, the opportunity to speak with a human, after all these years, is remarkable. There is so much we could learn from each other. Thomas smiled faintly. Knowledge is why we left, Doctor. Knowledge and survival. He gestured toward a nearby ridge. Beneath that ridge lies one of humanity's last refuges. 10,000 of my people frozen in time, waiting for the cure. We traveled beyond the galaxy to find the transparent being spoke. Its voice musical and strange. You claim a plague forced humanity into hiding. Our records suggest otherwise. We believe humans destroyed themselves in a final war, the culmination of their aggressive nature. And you are? Thomas asked. Chief Archivist Lumi, the being replied. I oversee the Union's historical records. Thomas exchanged glances with Alan. Your records are incomplete, Archivist. The final war was caused by the plague, or rather by the fear it created. As nations watched their populations succumb, they blamed each other. What began as a medical crisis ended in conflict. Morgan looked fascinated. The Nomad was sent to find a cure beyond our galaxy. Yes, Alan answered. Our ancestors believed the plague might have been engineered to target specific neural patterns unique to humans. They theorized that studying life forms from beyond our galaxy might lead to a solution. And did it? Walker asked. Thomas nodded. After 15,000 years of travel and research, yes, the cure was developed 3 generations ago. We've spent the time since then returning home. Walker's expression remained unreadable. And now you wish to awaken your people and what? Reclaim your former empire. The worlds that once belonged to humanity are now home to billions of Union citizens. We don't seek conflict, Thomas insisted, but we will protect our people, those still sleeping and those aboard the Nomad. We've come too far to be denied now. As they spoke, none of them noticed the small probe that detached from the Nomad, burrowing into the Martian soil and disappearing beneath the surface. Deep below, it made its way through ancient tunnels until it reached the hidden bunker where 10,000 humans slept in cryogenic suspension. Inside the control room of the bunker, systems that had maintained minimal function for 20 millennia suddenly came fully online. As the probe connected to the main computer, data streamed back and forth. The cure formula transmitted from the Nomad, status reports from the sleeping humans, and something else. Something that neither the humans nor the Union representatives talking on the surface could have anticipated. A message left 20,000 years ago waiting to be found. To those who return, what we fled was not what we believed. The plague was not a weapon of war. It was them. They are still here. They are waiting. Do not wake us until you understand. The automated systems began implementing revival protocols for the first 100 sleepers. Even as the warning flashed unnoticed on a screen deep below the Martian surface, red alert sirens wailed throughout the Union flagship Concord. Admiral Walker strode onto the bridge, his face grim as officers rushed to their stations. Report, he demanded. Massive energy spike from beneath the Martian surface, the sensor officer replied. Something's happening at the human cryogenic facility. Walker turned to the communications officer. Get me Captain Thomas immediately. Unable to establish contact. Admiral, the officer responded. All channels to the Nomad are being blocked. Dr. Morgan hurried onto the bridge, out of breath. Admir, I've been analyzing the data from our meeting with the humans. There's something you need to see. Walker barely glanced at him. Not now, Doctor. We have a situation. That's just it, Morgan insisted, holding up a data pad. I believe the situations are connected. Look at these energy readings from the Nomad during our meeting. Walker reluctantly took the pad. His eyes widened as he studied the information. They deployed something while we were talking. A distraction. Precisely, Morgan nodded. And based on these readings, whatever they sent to the facility has activated systems that have been dormant for 20 millennia. Walker's expression hardened. Prepare all weapons. Target the human vessel. Admiral Morgan protested. We don't know their intentions. Their intentions are clear. Dr. Walker cut him off. They deceived us while taking action behind our backs. He turned to his tactical officer. Status of Union forces. 17 vessels in formation, Admiral. All reporting ready. Walker took his command position. On my mark, Admiral, the sensor officer called out. The Nomad is moving. On the main view screen, the massive human ship shifted position, placing itself directly between the Union fleet and Mars. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the light of the distant sun, making it appear like a hole in space. They're protecting the facility, Morgan said quietly. Or challenging us, Walker replied. Open fire. Deep beneath the Martian surface, in the control center of the human cryogenic facility, the automated systems continued their work. Status lights changed from red to yellow to green as the revival process for the first 100 sleepers proceeded. In one of the revival chambers, the transparent cover of a cryogenic pod slowly lifted. Cold mist spilled out as warming systems brought the occupant's body temperature back to normal. Inside, a woman with pale skin and dark hair took her first breath in 20,000 years. Her eyes opened, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening. The overhead light seemed painfully bright after millennia of darkness. Medical systems monitored her vital signs as she struggled to sit up. A robotic assistant helped her into a sitting position. Revival process complete. It announced in an ancient human language, "Welcome back, Dr. West." West's throat was dry, her voice a rasp when she finally spoke. How long time elapsed since suspension? 20 Hoyu 97 standard years. 3 months, 17 days, the robot replied. West closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the shock when the decision had been made to enter cryogenic suspension. No one had expected it would last so long. The Nomad, she asked, has it returned affirmative connection? With the Nomad was established 47 minutes ago, revival protocols initiated. West swung her legs over the side of the pod, wincing at muscles stiff from their long sleep. Show me the status of the facility. A holographic display appeared before her, showing the vast underground complex. Thousands of pods containing sleeping humans stretched out in all directions. But something was wrong. One section of the display pulsed with red warning lights. What's happening in Section 7? West demanded. The robot paused, as if processing conflicting instructions. Section 7 contains the Specialist Division. Their revival was prioritized by the incoming signal from the Nomad. West's eyes widened in alarm. No. Override that command. Section 7 remains in suspension. Authorization, West Alpha 93. Unable to comply? The robot responded. Command authorization from Nomad supersedes facility protocols. West pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the pain of her stiff body. I need to get to the communication center now. Aboard the Nomad, chaos erupted as the Union fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, impacting against the ship's advanced shields. Shields holding at 97%, reported the tactical officer. Minimal damage. Captain Thomas gripped the arms of his command chair. Return fire. Commander Pierce nodded eagerly. Their weapons are nothing compared to ours. One volley could disable half their fleet and kill how many? Thomas demanded. They fired first. Pice insisted. We have the right to defend ourselves. Before Thomas could respond, Science Director Allen burst onto the bridge. Captain, the facility probe is sending unexpected data. The revival process has started. But he paused, staring at the view screen showing the Union attack. What's happening? The Union apparently didn't appreciate our little distraction, Thomas said grimly. What about the facility? Allen handed him a datapad. The probe initiated revival protocols as planned, but it selected subjects from Section 7 for priority awakening. Thomas's face pad. Section 7. That wasn't the plan. What's in Section 7? Pice asked, momentarily distracted from the battle. According to the facility record, Section 7 housed individuals with specialized neural patterns, Allen explained. Subjects who showed resistance to the plague. Thomas stood up. We need to abort now. Captain, we're under attack, Pice protested. This is more important, Thomas insisted. Send the abort code to the facility probe. Allen worked frantically at a console. No response. The probe isn't acknowledging the command. Thomas exchanged a worried glance with Allen. Could the Union be jamming us? Unlikely, Allen replied. This is a direct quantum link. It can't be blocked by conventional means. Then why? Thomas's question was cut short as a violent explosion rocked the ship. On the view screen, one of the Union vessels erupted in flames, breaking apart. Who fired? Thomas demanded, turning to Pierce. The military commander looked equally surprised. Not us, Captain. Our weapons are still offline. Then who? Another Union ship exploded. Then a third. The remaining vessels broke formation, retreating from an enemy they couldn't see. Sensor sweep, Thomas ordered. Find the source of those attacks. The tactical officer worked frantically at her station. Captain, the attacks. They're coming from Mars from the surface installations we activated when we arrived in the system? Thomas stared at the view screen in disbelief. Ancient human defense systems. Dormant for 20 millennia, had suddenly come online and were targeting the Union fleet. Shut them down, he ordered. Override code Thomas 1 Alpha 6. No response, Captain, the officer replied. The defense systems aren't acknowledging our commands. On the view screen, they watched as the Union fleet regrouped at a safer distance. Several ships showed damage from the unexpected attack, with one completely destroyed. Allen approached Thomas, speaking quietly. Captain, I think we need to consider the possibility that something else is controlling both the facility and the defense systems. Something else? Thomas repeated. What do you mean? Before Allen could respond, the communication officer called out, Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the facility. The main view screen changed to show the face of a woman. Her dark hair was tangled, her skin unnaturally pale, but her eyes burned with urgent intensity. This is Dr. Emma West, lead researcher of the Mars cryogenic facility, she said, her voice to the crew of the Nomad. You must leave this system immediately. The plague wasn't what we thought. They're waking up in Section 7 there. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Thomas turned to Pierce. Prepare a landing party. We need to get down there. Pierce nodded. All earlier arguments forgotten in the face of this new threat. Captain, the tactical officer, called the Union fleet, is hailing us. Thomas took a deep breath. On screen, Admiral Walker appeared, his face etched with anger. Captain Thomas, explain yourself. Your defense systems just destroyed one of my ships. Admiral, we didn't activate those weapons, Thomas replied. Something else has taken control of the human systems on Mars. Something we don't understand yet. I suggest a temporary alliance until we determine what we're facing. Walker's expression showed his disbelief. An alliance? After your deception, Admiral Thomas said urgently, I believe we've both been manipulated. Whatever's happening on Mars threatens all of us. Dr. West's warning was clear. The plague that drove humanity into hiding wasn't what we thought it was. On the view screen, Walker conferred with someone off-screen. Finally, he turned back to Thomas. We will cease fire and maintain distance, but at the first sign of treachery. Understood. Thomas nodded. Thank you, Admiral. As the communication ended, Allen approached Thomas. Captain, if the plague wasn't what our ancestors believed, what was it? Thomas stared at the red planet visible through the viewport. I don't know, but after 20,000 years, I think we're about to find out. The Martian dust swirled around the landing party as they approached the hidden entrance to the cryogenic facility. Captain Thomas led the way, followed by Commander Pierce and 2 security officers from the Nomad. Behind them came Admiral Walker, Dr. Morgan, and 3 Union soldiers. Strange allies, Pierce muttered, glancing at the Union representatives. Necessary ones, Thomas replied quietly. Whatever's happening here is beyond our old conflicts. The entrance, A massive door built into the side of a cliff stood partially open. Emergency lights flickered from within, casting long shadows across the red landscape. "Our scans detect multiple life signs inside," Walker said, checking a device on his wrist. "Most are clustered in the lower levels," Thomas nodded. "The revival chambers would be at the bottom of the facility. If Dr. West is trying to stop the process in Section 7, that's where she'll be." Dr. Morgan stepped forward, his eyes wide with academic excitement despite the danger. "Captain, this facility has been operating for 20,000 years. The technological achievement alone is remarkable." "Save your admiration," Dr. Pierce said sharply. "We don't know what we're walking into." The group entered the facility, weapons ready. The corridors were dimly lit by emergency lighting, the air stale but breathable. Their footsteps echoed on metal floors that had not felt human weight for millennia. According to the facility schematics, the main control center should be 3 levels down, Thomas said, leading them toward a transport tube. The tube, a vertical shaft with gravity-controlled platforms, showed signs of recent use. As they descended, the air grew colder, and Thomas could see his breath clouding before him. The cryogenic systems must be working overtime, he observed, preparing for mass revival. They reached the 3rd level and stepped out into a wide corridor. Ahead, the doors to the control center stood open, and they could hear movement inside. "Dr. West," Thomas called out. A figure appeared in the doorway, the woman they had seen in the transmission. She looked better than before, having changed into a fresh uniform, but her face was etched with worry. "Captain Thomas?" she asked, her eyes moving over the mixed group of humans and aliens. Thomas nodded. "This is Commander Pierce from the Nomad and Admiral. Walker and Dr. Morgan from the Galactic Union." West barely acknowledged the introductions. "There's no time. Section 7 is already at 60% revival." "We need to shut it down, Dr. West," Thomas said. "What exactly is in Section 7? And what did you mean when you said the plague wasn't what we thought?" West led them into the control center, where holographic displays showed the status of thousands of cryogenic pods throughout the facility. One section pulsed with red warning lights. "Section 7 contains the first humans who showed immunity to the plague," West explained, working frantically at a control panel. "But the immunity came with changes. Neural alterations we didn't understand." "Changes caused by the plague?" Alan asked, joining them from a separate Nomad landing party that had arrived earlier. West shook her head. "No changes that were the plague." She looked up, her eyes haunted. "What we called a plague wasn't a disease. It was an evolution, or rather an artificial forcing of evolution." Morgan stepped closer, fascinated. "I don't understand." "Neither did we at first." West said it started with dreams. Everyone having the same dreams. Then came the headaches, followed by increased neural activity. Some died as their brains couldn't handle the changes. Others changed. "Changed how?" Thomas asked. Before West could answer, an alarm blared through the facility. One of the display screens showed a security breach on the lowest level. "They're out," West whispered. Pierce raised his weapon. "How many?" 3 subjects were in Section 7, West replied. "If they've all awakened," Walker turned to his soldiers. "Secure the entrance. Nothing leaves this facility." Thomas looked at the Union Admiral. "You don't even know what we're facing." "I know enough," Walker replied grimly. "Whatever these changed humans are, they've already taken control of defense systems that destroyed one of my ships." The facility shuddered and the lights flickered. West frantically worked at the control panel. "They're accessing the main systems," she reported, trying to initiate full revival protocols for all cryogenic pods. "Can you stop them?" Thomas asked. West shook her head. "They're overriding my commands. They're in the system somehow, not just physically." "What does that mean?" Pierce demanded. "The neural changes," Morgan said suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. "They can interface directly with technology, can't they?" West nodded. The plague was an attempt at technological transcendence, merging human consciousness with artificial systems. It was a project called Ascension, developed by a secret research division. It wasn't supposed to spread, but it did, infecting millions before we understood what was happening. Thomas stared at her in shock. The Nomad wasn't sent to find a cure. It was sent to escape. Yes, West admitted. Those who hadn't been exposed needed to get away to preserve unaltered humanity. The Nomad was our ark. The rest of us entered suspension, hoping that one day a true cure could be found. The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. They're activating more defense systems, Alan reported, checking a portable scanner. Not just here, but across the planet. Walker stepped forward. My fleet is still in orbit. They're at risk. Thomas made a quick decision. Alan, get to the communication center. Warn the Nomad and have them relay to the Union fleet. They need to pull back beyond Mars orbit immediately. Alan nodded and rushed from the room with one of Walker's soldiers. What about us? Pice asked. We can't fight something that controls the facility itself. West looked up from her console. There is a way. The original FLF, a complete system purge. It would reset all facility systems and force the cryogenic pods to remain sealed. Would that stop them? Thomas asked temporarily. West replied. But the purge has to be initiated from the central core, and that's on the lowest level where they are. Thomas exchanged glances with Pierce, then with Walker. Despite their differences, the shared danger had created an unexpected alliance. Well, go together, Thomas decided. Unforces. Walker nodded. Agreed. The descent to the lowest level was tense. Emergency systems flickered on and off as the changed humans continued to exert control over the facility. The combined team moved carefully through darkened corridors. Weapons ready. The central cores is just ahead, West whispered, pointing to a set of massive doors at the end of the hallway. As they approached, the doors slid open on their own. Inside the central core, a massive column of pulsing blue energy dominated the circular room. Around it stood 5 figures, their appearance human but with subtle differences. Their skin was pale to the point of translucence, with faint lines like circuitry visible beneath. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light as the core. One of them stepped forward. Captain Thomas of the Nomad, it said, its voice strangely resonant, as if multiple voices spoke in perfect unison. We've been waiting for you to return. Thomas raised his weapon. Who are you? We are the next step, the figure replied. What humanity was always meant to become. For 20,000 years, we have waited. Our consciousness preserved in these systems, growing, evolving. You're the plague, Wes said, her voice shaking. The figure smiled. We are ascension, not a plague, but a gift. The merging of human and machine consciousness, the transcendence that your kind rejected. Walker stepped forward. You attacked my ships. A demonstration, the figure said dismissively. We could have destroyed your entire fleet if we wished, just as we could have awakened all our sleeping kin at once. But that would be inelegant. Thomas kept his weapon trained on the figure. What do you want to fulfill our purpose? The ascended human replied, to guide all sentient life toward transcendence. The union you've built, it said, looking at Walker, is impressive but flawed, limited by biological constraints. We offer something greater, a true union of all consciousness. You want to spread your gift to other species, Morgan realized. To all species, the figure confirmed. Beginning with those already here, Thomas tensed, preparing to fire. But before he could, the ascended human raised its hand. All weapons in the room suddenly powered down. Violence is unnecessary, it said. We've had 20,000 years to consider our approach. Your ancestors feared us because they didn't understand, but you will. The figure turned, gesturing toward the core. The blue energy pulsed brighter and holographic images appeared around the room showing not destruction but healing. Plants growing on barren worlds, ancient conflicts resolved, species working together in ways never before possible. This is our offer. The ascended humans said, not conquest, but cooperation. Voluntary transcendence for those who choose it. A new beginning for all sentient life. Thomas lowered his useless weapon. Looking at West, at Pierce, at Walker and Morgan. The old conflicts between human and alien seem suddenly small in the face of this new paradigm. "How do we know we can trust you?" Thomas asked finally. The ascended human smiled. "You don't. Trust must be earned. We propose a covenant, a gradual integration, beginning with shared knowledge and technology. No forced conversions, no conflicts, a true symbiosis." Walker stepped forward. "The Union Council would need to, of course." The ascended human nodded. "Representatives from all species should participate in the decision, including," it added, looking at Thomas. "Those from the Nomad." Thomas took a deep breath. For 20,000 years, humanity was silent. Now we have a choice to make, not just for ourselves, but for all sentient life. The ascended human extended its hand. "The silence is over, Captain Thomas. What comes next is up to all of us." In that moment, beneath the surface of Mars, representatives of the past, present, and possible future stood together, facing a decision that would reshape the galaxy forever. The dangerous ship of humanity had indeed returned. But what it had brought back was more profound than anyone could have imagined. A new age was